Now suppose we want for this trained set, okay, remember this is developed with trained data set. Okay, we can put together, assemble some of the results for further analysis, which we will do later. But how do we put together the data? Okay, so we can assemble. Okay, we are interested in the value of total, the target variable is total value. Okay. Suppose we want to look at the actual total value, predicted total value, okay, and then the residual. Residual is, see, y is your actual value, y hat is the predicted value. Now y minus y hat is the residual, that's the error. Error is another name for residual. Suppose we want to gather these three and then maybe do some plots or whatever, okay. So we can do that by creating, okay. Now we want to create a data frame. So you can say data frame, and then we can include those three data, okay. So we want to start with train.df total value, okay. We want that column, okay. So that's your y, the actual value. And then suppose we want the corresponding y hat, the predicted value. The predicted value is in reg.res, right? So if you put a $, you see fitted value. Fitted value is your predicted y hat. Okay. So now we have y and y hat, and then let's say that we want the residuals. So reg.res, okay, residuals, not df.residual. df.residual is degrees of freedom of residuals. That's not what we want. We want residuals, actual residuals. Okay. Now let's say that we want to put that into that variable train.res, right? So this is going to create a data frame with these three columns. Okay. Now this is the total value from train, and these two are the fitted and residual values from train. So they'll all have the same number of rows. If you're not careful, if the number of rows are not same, this will not work. It will give you an error, right? So run that, and it gives me an error. Okay. So arguments imply different number of rows. Okay, let's see. Train. So this is the problem that I was just telling you about. Train is 3841. I made a mistake, and that is here the data, I should use train data. So what we started out with is what? We're going to use the train data to develop the model, and then use the results on the validate data to assess the accuracy. And I used the entire data set there, which is obviously not the right thing to do. So this is another thing, when you do something else and it gives you an error, that gives you an opportunity to catch any mistakes that I made in this instance. So train.df. Okay, so now I use train, so the number of rows must match. So I should be able to run this code, and I have it. Okay. So train.res has 3481. Okay. So since I did not give any column name, okay, so the name of the column is now preceded by the source of the column. So this column came from train.df, so we put train.df in front. This came from reg.res, so we put reg.res in front, and same here. Okay. Now, if you want to put, if you want to give it a name, then you can do that here in the data frame command. So, if you in the data frame function, you can give a name. So, if you say total value equal to, then that label will be used as the name for that. Okay, and then say predicted, okay, and then say residual. Okay, so when I build the data frame, if I give a name and then set it equal to the data source, then the name will be used as the column name. Okay. Now, if I run that and you go back to train res and you see the names that I used in the data.frame code is now used as the name for the columns. Okay. So this is what this is. I have done that here. Okay. Now let's predict. Okay, let's use this to predict y hat or total value for the valid.df data set. See, now we did all our model building using the train.df. We have not touched valid.df. Okay. So now we're going to take that model and apply the model, okay, to this valid data set, and we're going to create y hat, the fitted value. Okay, so we're going to take each observation in valid, run it through the equation that we have developed, and find y hat. Okay, so how do we do that? There is a code for that that is called predict. Okay, so if you do predict, and we'll be using this code predict quite often. So it has two things that we have to provide. One is, where is the model? Okay, it has to go to model and get the model information. So that is, the model information is in reg.res, right? And then, okay, new data equal to, give it the data set upon which the model needs to be applied. Okay, and that is valid, valid.df. Okay, so the code predict is going to get the model information from here, from reg.res, okay, and then apply that model into each row of the valid.df data set. Now, of course, we want to catch that into, say, valid.pred. So that is pred for prediction, so valid.pred. So now this is going to capture the predicted values. Okay, so now let's run that. So now we have valid.pred right here. You see, there is 23, 21 rows, which is what valid data set has, and then it has values 392, 401, 318, and so on. So now we have the y hat values of the valid data set. Okay, and we can set up a data frame like we did for the trained data set. See, like here. Okay, so I'm going to just copy paste that code. Okay, and so let's call it valid.res. Okay, valid.res should have, for total value, from valid.df. So total value is going to be from the valid df, the total values. The predicted values, now we just did that. That's valid.pred. So predicted is valid.pred. Okay. Now residual, okay, we don't have residual anywhere. For the valid data set, we have the actual values that is in the data set to begin with. We just calculated the y hat. So residuals we have to calculate ourselves. So that would be y minus y hat, right? So residuals is valid dot df total value, right, minus valid dot pred. Okay, let's put that in a separate line. So this is something that we are now calculating ourselves because we don't have it anywhere saved. We do it ourselves. Okay. Run that, and then so we have valid dot res right here. If you click that, then you have the 3 columns. Like what we did for train, we have the 3 columns. Right now, we really didn't have to do this. I'm just showing how to do it if you want to. So we can take this, and we will do this in chapter 6. Okay, once you assemble the data, and then maybe we can do some plots between y and y hat. We can look at a box plot for residuals and so on and so forth. Okay, but what we are interested right now is to look at the accuracies in the validation data set. Okay, so that's what we are interested in, which we will do next. But here is how you will assemble data from the predictions for further analysis if needed.